So, good morning. I'm here with Rogier Rouppe van Voort, COO at Payments and Card Network, or PCN for short. Rogier, good afternoon. Good to see you.
Likewise, good to be here.
Excellent. Maybe to get things started, it's always best if the speaker introduces himself or herself, but himself in this case.
Yeah, of course. Happy to do that. Yeah, so my name is Rogier. I'm the COO of, what used to be Payments and Cards Network, but now we're PCN. We have started in 2008 with doing recruitment and headhunting for the payments and fintech space. We have an office in Amsterdam. We just opened up an office in Berlin. We have an office in Atlanta and an office in Singapore. Besides now the fintech and the payments markets, we also focus on SaaS, e-commerce, and cybersecurity. And next to that, we also provide marketing services. So we have a podcast called In Check with Fintech. We have a magazine called the PCN Magazine. We do webinars, all sorts of stuff in order to support our clients with their marketing efforts.
Okay. Looking back at 2020, some observations you can share with us? Maybe restricted to 3. I know you're always a good analyst.
Well, I think the kind of the elephant in the room is COVID, right? That's I think the biggest observation, and the impact that has, or the way that has changed, the way that companies look at having people employed, having offices, working from home. I think that is definitely a big one that has an impact on HR. I think so. How satisfied are people? I think that Corona has caused a lot of stress on everyone, employees, employers. Not just because it's a completely new situation that we're in, but definitely also because the working from home has its own kind of challenges, such as having kids running around or other distractions around you. But also in recruitment, I think the way that we started, or people or our clients, or I think companies in general have started to recruit is now more online, where it used to be, okay, we always want to meet people face to face, exceptions here and there, of course, but that has now changed to completely doing interview processes online, doing digital onboarding. Employer branding seems to be more important than ever, because there's no such thing as having a feel with a team of people, having them physically around you or being in an office. It's working from home, and your connection and with the brand and your dedication to do good. So yeah, I think that's the main kind of observations for me, at least from 2020. And last but not least, I think that despite the COVID, there's been, especially the markets that we're in, payments and fintech initially, and the e-commerce, cybersecurity, and SaaS markets as well, there's still been a huge uptick in terms of hiring, recruitment, but also in terms of turnover of companies on the money side of things. So I think that's very interesting. We can have such a crisis, but we see that the behavioral shift that has caused this crisis has still made other companies within those industries do very well, and still be able to hire and recruit people. And I think that's very exciting.
That's very interesting. So basically, it sounds like you did not have to pivot the PCN business model away from mainly recruitment. That is still the main part of what you're doing.
Correct. Yeah, but I think it's also this time has been very interesting at looking at, okay, where might there be other business lines that we want to get into, or where else could we support our clients? And that's also not necessarily a pivot, but something we've built out is more the marketing side of things. So helping companies with their brand, having a stronger employer brand, like I just said, doing webinars together with them, position them as a subject matter expert, whether that's in a specific HR field, like how do they do remote working, how do they manage remote, or whether that is within specifically their fintech space, open banking, PSD2, payments, everything that comes with that. So yes, definitely a lot of our core business is still recruitment, but we've also built out other business lines such as marketing.
Interesting. And you already mentioned not only digital recruitment, also digital onboarding.
Yeah.
Is that your physical goods, your laptop and other elements are shipped to you with FedEx, and then you spend a week, 2 weeks on Zoom with your other new colleagues being onboarded? Is it a hybrid model? What does that look like?
Yeah, definitely. Indeed, it's shipping your goods to your working from home setup. Make sure that everyone is set up in the right way. So make sure that you have people who come on board who have a space where they can actually focus and are not continuously distracted. But also definitely having that onboarding. I think here it's the important change in terms of engagement is that people used to be in the office where they could walk up to people when they have questions. Now all you have is that digital onboarding, that FaceTime that you have via Zoom, via Hangouts, or whichever the video tools are out there, which you're using. So that kind of FaceTime with your managers has decreased, which means we have to be more efficient with that FaceTime in order to have a successful onboarding. But also here, it means that you have to find people who are self-starters, who are willing to take responsibility for doing the work that is necessary and don't have to continuously be chased by their manager, leader, whatever it is. So I think that's very interesting.
Yeah, but I guess also people who are, on the one hand, not afraid to ask a question, but perhaps more importantly, go looking for that person or that source of information to get an answer. And of course, that could be a SharePoint or a Dropbox, but it could also be a person. So I guess things like a buddy system, is that something you see?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think on that point also, I think people have to be more creative now, right? So you have to be more creative about finding an answer, whether that is finding the right person yourself by just starting to speak to people who you normally might have not spoken to if you would be in an office setup environment, but definitely also the buddy system. But even with the buddy system, you would experience a similar thing, right? Because right now, I think everyone is talking about, okay, I work more efficient, but that means I have less time in between and also less time to spend on maybe other activities, such as, for example, responding to your buddy or your employee who might have a question. I think that really now is all collated in a certain time of the day, which means that there's a delay on the other end of the person asking the question. So it has an impact somewhere. I'm not saying it's all doom and gloom. I think there's also a lot of good coming from the digital onboarding. Like I said, for example, the people becoming more creative, and also I think, speaking to people, coming up with solutions they might have not come up with themselves. But there's also things I think companies need to keep in mind when they do the digital onboarding, because it's not as straightforward as it would be when you do it on the office.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, exactly. That's, I see the same thing myself, where whether it's a WhatsApp group or something in something like Teams or Slack, but reach people, but also be able to ask questions. Do you see the candidates before they get hired? Do you see a different behavior or different questions from candidates, or are they looking for different things from a potential employer?
Yeah, it's more about how do they go about leading remotely? How do they deal with working from home? How do they see the future? I mean, there's companies, I think Google is the best example, talking about we're not going to have anyone in the office until, I think they just extended June, something like that. So those kind of policies, are they in place? More opportunistic candidates then come from that, who say, okay, well, I don't have to relocate now because it doesn't matter where I am. Is that right? How do companies perceive that? So I think it's more around, okay, how do companies deal with the current situation? How sure are they of themselves in the future? What has the impact been of Corona on their financials, but also on their employees, on the way that they work? I think it's more those questions around that.
Yeah, interesting. I think both Google and Facebook even extended that not coming to the office to the end of 2021, or maybe it was only Facebook. But you're right; it's been extended for quite a period of time.
Yeah.
Of course, at the end of the day, the most important question everybody always has is, what will I get paid? Do you see any changes in terms of salaries, or perhaps the components of salaries?
Well, there's changes. I'm not sure if that's due to Corona, but for example, there's some companies who stop paying bonuses, even to their commercial people. I think that's an interesting development. I'm not necessarily sure if that has to do with the Corona situation or just with people development as a whole. But definitely, I think where it used to be, again, in the office, people were offering fun activities like a ping pong table, or going for dinner every month or every week, having team dinners, the budgets that were allocated to that. That has all disappeared now. To offset that fun side of things, companies used to say, all right, we pay you a little bit less salary, but for that in return, look what you'll get. We'll offer you a community, we'll offer you a group to be part of, we'll offer you team lunches, all that kind of stuff. So that has now disappeared. So you see then companies still remaining their salary structures as is, also due to the uncertainty coming up. And I think it obviously requires a change in mindset to turn it around. But candidates are saying, all right, okay, well, if that's not there anymore, then I'm more open, or I'm looking around for something else. So I think in that sense, salaries have changed, but not everywhere. There's here and there some examples of companies who do that. But for the most part, it has remained the same, the salaries. Whereas indeed, maybe it should increase because there's less money spent on traveling, there's less money spent on lunches and stuff like that. But I don't see an increase in salaries because of it. Let's put it that way.
Okay. No, but I can imagine that, for instance, part of the spend on fun is now shifting to, will provide a world-class home working environment or home working equipment. There used to be a gym at the office, will now reimburse you for your gym membership because we still care about fit and healthy people. I can even imagine things like massages are now available at home. So those types of secondary benefits still there, but in a different way.
Yeah, and I mean, there is secondary benefits like having a budget for having a good setup to work at home for your office. So that could be a desk, a good chair, a screen, stuff like that. So those budgets are allocated, not just for new employees joining, but also for people already there.
For the existing ones, exactly.
And that happens from small companies to the big banks. There's a lot of people who do that.
And do you see a trend of also people, now it's all digital, the location of sales and people in general is less relevant? Do you see a shift towards certain places? So I can imagine Amsterdam is interesting because it's well connected and it has good internet. And another place, it's always tricky to mention a place that is less good, but a place that's less well connected, but also the internet is known to be worse, or has that not changed?
I don't see that much of an impact, and I think what is dependent again on the size of company and especially how many entities they have and in which countries, is that you can't just have, how as great as it sounds, you can't just have a salesperson say, okay, you can live anywhere, because there's taxation that needs to take care of. So unless they're willing to take more of a freelance type of contract, of course. But here, where there might be companies who are interested in freelancers more than they were before, there's people saying who are in stable jobs now, and for them to change jobs, to say, okay, I want something stable in return. I'm not just going to live anywhere and then have a freelance contract and the risk of being let go at any stage. So not really at the moment. Okay.
Any interesting examples worth mentioning overall that you've seen over the last few months?
Yeah, well, I think to further on from what you just asked, I think what's interesting is that there are companies like Stripe, for example, who are saying, we offer you an incentive. I think what I read the other day was $20 grand to relocate from New York or San Francisco to another city. The other side of that being that they say, okay, but then you don't have that much living expenses, so we also decrease your salary. So I think that's very interesting. It has both pros and cons, I think. Another one which I always like to talk about, and that goes beyond Corona, I think, is a company called Gravity Payments. They were in the news a couple of years ago because they equalized or decreased the pay gap. They increased basic salaries to 75 grand for everyone. And with that, increase more engagement with their employees. And I think that's very important. Like we said before, engagement, especially in these times, is very important. Gravity was ahead of the curve and did that this way a couple of years ago. But now what they've seen is that despite having a decrease in their turnover, employees standing up and saying, all right, okay, I'm happy to hand in some of my salary, cut some of my salary in return for not having to let go of everyone. And that has increased sales now over the last couple of months. I think that's also due to other reasons, but I think that's very interesting because there's definitely a high engagement and high positivity of the employees towards the company.
Yeah, that's actually very exemplary from bringing a sense of belongingness to the company and a all for one mentality. Very impressive. Good example. All right. Any final food for thought before we let the audience go?
Yes, I think what is something that I've been thinking about recently is now that we see indeed companies saying, all right, don't come to the office, like Facebook, like Google, don't come to the office until the end of 2021. All offices are closed, or some companies even say, all right, we're going to end all of our lease contracts as soon as we have the opportunity to do so, because we are going to switch to fully remote. I think what we shouldn't forget is, despite people saying that the longer this takes, the more impact it will have on the way that we perceive working from home, and there might be more willingness. I think there's also people longing more and more now for connectivity, everyone being in lockdown or most countries being on lockdown. You miss that social aspects. I think human beings are social animals. They are missing that, and they will miss that as well when we all go back to normal. I think they'll rather long for going back to the office, seeing their colleagues, going for team drinks, being around people, feeling part of something again, rather than just being confined in their own home. So I think that's something that I see as very interesting to think about over what's going to come in the next couple of months.
All right, excellent. Rogier, thanks very much. A pleasure as always.
Likewise.